In preparing for this kickoff, I revisited one of my former fieldwork sites in Marseille, the first reception platform for asylum seekers, where all those who wish to seek asylum must pre-register before being received by the prefecture. Incidentally, a new poster had been taped to the window. And as you can see on my slide, the poster uses symbols to identify various categories of so-called vulnerable people, including pregnant women, women in general, elderly people, people whose mobility, hearing, or seeing are impaired, and those in need of a translator. That one is a bit hard to guess, but I figured out that's what it means. So the poster actualizes questions we will research in work package 4. How is vulnerability understood by ground-level actors in refugee entry zones? Who are defined as vulnerable, and how are their special needs met? Which groups are left out, and are their vulnerability thus exacerbated? And what are the effects of the Global Refugee Compact and the Global Migration Compact on the understanding of vulnerability and practices of ground-level actors? In this case, one could, for example, ask, is the poster a sign that the compacts are already trickling down since it had newly been hung up in the window? Or is it rather national or local policies or pressure from NGOs or migrant activists that has brought about these new practices of prioritization of special needs? Now, in order to answer these and related questions, we will use participant observation, open-ended and semi-structured interviews, focus group interviews, and collaborative methods. In order to capture changes due to the compacts, the fieldworks will be carried out with approximately a year distance between 2 rounds of fieldwork. Such qualitative ethnographic methods are particularly suited to get a thorough knowledge of the context that would help us interpret on-the-ground practices and how they are changing or not. In this case, for instance, such contextual knowledge of the work at the first reception platform where I already did fieldwork allows me to understand that the poster may in practice restrict rather than expand the access of those with special needs. Whereas these groups had always been given priority by the guard on a case-to-case basis, this poster now limits priority to Tuesday afternoons only, as you can see from the text. So first reception platforms are one of the governance actors involved in international protection in Marseille, run by an NGO on a yearly renewable contract. Work Package 4 will map which governance actors participate, collaborate, or dominate in international protection tasks in main refugee arrival zones in the European Union, including there, France, Italy, Spain, and Greece, and also in Canada and South Africa. The composition of ground-level actors will vary from site to site. It may include intergovernmental organizations, including the UNHCR, which was here earlier, regional organizations, including the European Union, states, sub-states, municipalities, communes, transnational non-state organizations, and public and private actors. Based on this mapping that we will do of who is invested on the ground, we will assess whether the compacts are introducing new governance actors to the field, and whether and to what extent the compacts are changing their collaboration patterns and networks. Last but not least, ethnographic fieldwork allows us to capture not only the points of view of governance actors, but also the points of view of asylum seekers and migrants themselves. How do these populations understand vulnerability and the practices put in place to meet special needs? Do they perceive new practices put in place as a follow-up of the compacts as positive for themselves or as changing their situation? For this last axis, we will develop collaborative methodologies and talkbacks, which ensure that people who are targeted by the compacts are also heard in our research project. So to finish, last night I was on Messenger with one of my interlocutors, a Gambian in his mid-20s, who, like many young male asylum seekers in Marseille, has slept for months in the makeshift camp outside the first reception platform. Given the shortage of housing in the city, it is only offered to asylum seekers who are deemed particularly vulnerable. The rest of them are on the street currently. So my interlocutor asked me, do you think the EU is aware of some of our living conditions in the European Union? I replied, I'm not sure, but I will try to tell them, and I think that is part of what we're going to do in the PROTECT project.